I'm an artist. I didn't give them a tail. Why didn't I give them a tail? And I like Pokemon. So this is just a kangaroo. But I don't know that much about Pokemon. So this is Barney the dinosaur. Because I played like 2 games and I don't think I have watched an entire episode of anything in the series. I got the head shape right, which is good. But I do watch PokeTubers. I just draw a crab. So I see Pokemon fairly regularly. Collar is off, legs off, arms non-existent. Yeah, this should be an easy challenge. Not much to say about Bulbasaur. I think Bulbasaur might be my best drawing among the starters, and I think maybe among any of the other drawings. Most important thing, of course, is the bulb. So let's compare. I got the eye color right, but not quite the eye shape. I know there was, I figured there must have been more of a design going on the creature, but I went with yellow instead of the green. But not bad. All my colors are a little bit off here, but not bad. Okay, move on to Ivysaur, which I just made a larger Bulbasaur, to be honest. The only thing I know about Ivysaur is that the bulb is now opened to a flower, but the flower is not open yet. In my mind's eye, I saw vines on either Ivysaur or Venusaur. But the more I thought about it, the more I come to the conclusion that that might just be when they use Vine Whip. So we compare color completely wrong. Should be more of a blue. I don't know why I went more green. I knew there was like a slight color shift, but I went more green when I should have gone more blue. I don't think my Venusaur is that bad. I know the flowers are open. I was going to say that the leaves are more tropical, but they were more tropical with Ivysaur already. But still, I'm pretty sure this is the general shape. Yeah. Okay, again, more of a blue with not green. Flower is more of a tree. But that's Venusaur. If I show that to you, you would say that's a Venusaur drawn by a person with color blindness. Maybe. Okay, move on to our fire starter with Charmander. I think my Charmander it's a little funny looking, but I think it's not bad. Generally, not much to say. The fire that keeps it alive, I have, which is important. Okay, so the eye color should be a different blue. And the stormy coloring should go down into the tail. Next we have Charmeleon, which might be my first strike. I already know it's ugly, it's not correct. The only thing I know about Charmeleon, it's bigger than a Charmander and it's more red. Okay, snout doesn't exist on mine at all. The eye color, of course, I expect it to be wrong, and there's a pupil situation going on. I didn't give it its back head spike. It made the fire bigger, which is correct, and I don't know where he's going. Okay, this is bad. Next we have Charizard, which I think among my final evolution starters, Charizard is probably my most accurate. Bigger fire, bigger tail, more of a snout and neck shape going on. That's everyone's favorite. That's Charizard, and I didn't give it wings. I forgot that Charizard has wings. We move on to Squirtle. I am a water type starter individual, so Squirtle is my favorite among the starters. Although I am not sure I've done them justice. It's just a little blue turtle. Okay, I have the eye color wrong, sectioning of the shell wrong, and also the color of the inside of the shell, although the back isn't too bad. And I've completely forgotten that Squirtle has a tail. We move on to Wartortle. Wartortle, I know I have the eye color wrong. The arms, which I didn't mention with Squirtle, but I do have the arms positioned wrong. And that was very obvious to me, but I couldn't figure out how to make it right. The blue of it is off. Tail and ear is not bad. Section of the shell wrong, as we expected. Move on to Blastoise, which looks a mess, to be honest. I could not figure out Blastoise at all. All I know is big turtle with cannons. And I've given it too many cannons. That's interesting. The sprite I'm looking, well, the image I'm looking at, it's facing the other direction. so I cannot see the section of the belly. But on the Mega Blastoise I'm seeing, it looks closer than with the other ones. We have our first bug, Caterpie. Something is wrong. So the underside should be yellow. I remember the little tail thing, but it should be yellow and larger. The eyes are completely wrong, snout wrong. It has that little red thing in the center of its forehead. I don't know what that is, but it isn't on mine. Next we move on to Metapod, which I think is my second strike. It's very ugly. It looks like a leaf. We compare, the eyes are wrong, sectioning wrong, general shape not bad, and the green is off but not too far off. It definitely looks more like a leaf than a cocoon. Move on to Butterfree. All I know is this is, I think, the general color, and that Butterfree has big feet. So big feet I was correct about the big feet, but they are bigger and there are no legs. The wings are wrong in every regard. The color of the feet should be the color of its body. I didn't give it its blue nose or hands or the fangs, but the eye color is correct. I will give myself no points for the antennae situation because it's a butterfly and that was very obvious. We want to Weedle. Something is wrong. Okay, so color not bad. I got this spike at the top and the end right. I gave it no feet and no nose, but the eyes not bad. And I think we need to put together an intervention for my Weedle. Something is wrong. Wait. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, I got the amount of sections right. Extra points for me. Move on to Cocoon. I don't want to talk about it. The color is close and the eyes could pass. Other than that, this is wrong. Speaking of things I don't want near me, Beedrill. God, I could not for the life of me envision Beedrill. The only thing I remember about Beedrill, besides the fact that it's a bee, is that it has a little beanie stinger situation going on. Okay, so I think the drill should have been very obvious to me. Beedrill, but I did not remember, so it doesn't have its little drill hands. PG, there are so many birds in Pokemon that I just kind of hope that I was thinking about PG correctly. So it is within the color family. Move on to the evolution. Pidgeotto. I know I already had the colors wrong because I had them wrong with Pidgey, but I remember that there's the red hair situation kind of going on. We compare that and we see that the hair situation is red but different. The underside, the brown I've added to the underside is a bit closer to the colors that actually exist on Pidgeotto. So, bonus points. Pidgeot is, I know, worse. From the moment I drew it, I knew that it was ugly. The hair situation I know is a bit more slick back, and that's it. Okay, so it is more slick back, but it's also longer. And there's an orange-yellow situation going on in the center, which I don't have. Again, bad. Move on to Rattata, which is a purple rat. The underside of the belly and under the nose should be more of a tan. The ears are the wrong shape, but in terms of something, not bad. I gave it more of a rat tail. Move on to Raticate. I think my Raticate is really, really accurate. I know it's that kind of Furby shape with big old teeth. And we compare. Okay, again, well, I gave it a little bit of the color on his stomach, but it should be coming up higher. Whiskers exist, but are the wrong color. The rat tail, this one has more of a rat tail. Move on to Sparrow. I know Sparrow has a yee ass haircut and red on its wings. Not the worst. Okay, so the haircut was a little less yee. than I thought. On to my next masterpiece, the Pharaoh. Beak wrong, feet wrong, shape wrong. I just remember it's longer. Bird white, it's more of like a vulture. Is that what it's based on? But I gave it its red hair spike thing, except I made it too chickeny and the wing should not be red. Then we want to Ekans, which if you didn't know is snake backwards. It's a purple snake. That's all I can say. Okay, so it's also a purple and yellow snake. I didn't put yellow on the side or around the neck or on the eyes, and I didn't give it its little rattlesnake rattles. I thought about it, but I just couldn't logic out if it did have that. Okay, move on to Arbok, which if you didn't know, Arbok has more of that diamond shape. Head wrong. The tongue is more spiked, so that's good. Not bad. I don't think this one is bad. The eye color is wrong. Then we have Pikachu. Cutie. I'm very proud of my Pikachu. Okay, Pikachu. Let's just compare. Why did I make the end of the tail black? Did I get Berenstain Beard? Did I get Berenstain Beard? Cosplay Pikachus. I made cosplay Pikachu. What? I was trying to make a female Pikachu. And I made cosplay Pikachu. Wow. The power that I have. Move on to Raichu. Fun over. I have made an ugly Raichu. Because I don't clearly remember what Raichu looks like at all. Okay, so Raichu has stubs for hands, which is scary. And much bigger feet. The tail. I got the general shape correct, but not coloring or the actual shape. Move on to Sandshrew. Okay, that should be an interesting one. Oh, I got most of it incorrect. The pattern, I just put a little bit on the back, but it should exist all over. What else can I say? This is not Sandshrew. So let's just move on to Sandslash, which would be so much better. Sandslash, I know, it's in the name, has bigger paws and sharp claws, bars, and has a back full of spikes. I did not remember the center forehead thing. Too many claws. And there's a separation, the paws, the shape of the hands, very different. We have Nidoran female. It's blue. I got the eye color right. Other than that, not much. Shape, big ears exist. Give it a little horn, which it does have, but not quite like that. Then we have Nidorina, which I know stands up. I didn't know what else was happening with Nidorina. I just made a creature to move on to Nidoqueen. Now, Nidoqueen, I think I got a bit more accurate because I know it has the chest situation along with the lower body type of armor thing. I did not give it the... Is that an ear or a horn? I think that's a horn. She has... I did not give the underside of the jaw the correct color, and I gave the TD armor a section in which it doesn't have, but the lower one does. Okay, let's move on to the other side where we have Nidoran male. That's not what I drew. Okay, then we have Nidorino. Again, the only thing I know is that in that whole line, the Nidorino stays on all fours and the Nidoking is on 2, while with the Nidoqueen side, Nidorina goes up on 2 and then Nidoqueen remains on 2. So I got that right. It is on all fours, but whatever creature it is not even close to being accurate. Why didn't I give it a horn? Why didn't I continue the horns? Then we have Nidoking. Nidoking is less in my head than Nidoqueen, so I expect it to be less accurate. Not the worst. Again, the eye color change at the final evolution. The inside of the ears should be a different color. Basically, every problem in this line with my drawings just exist on both sides. We can move away from those things and move on to Clefairy. I think my Clefairy is really good. I didn't give it the outside eye thing. The eyes actually have a color inside, and I didn't give it these little cheeksies. The end of the paws should be claws instead of whatever it is I did, and there should be little knobby things at the end. There's also the tail, and the ears should be actually ears instead of the formations I did. Then we move on to the evolution. Clefable is more tooth shaped, that's all I know. And it has wings. Same issues, the hands, the eyes. The ears point out more, or if they're still ears, I don't know. We have the swirl still, of course. On the tail. Okay, Vulpix. Vulpix is an interesting one for me. I'll keep it real. I think I just drew Kuruma. So I didn't draw Vulpix. All I know about Vulpix is a little fox with many tails, and mine is incredibly inaccurate. 9 tails. I got the color correct. I didn't add the hair thing. The ears are a bit wrong. Eye color wrong. I know the tails have a different color at the end. Yes, if you're thinking this is 9 tails, some of them are behind. There are some tails that are behind. It looked weird if I tried to draw all 9. Okay, move on to Jigglypuff. So I drew a creature. Once again, I drew a creature. The curl is a little looser than with Clefairy. So my curl is too Clefairy. It should be looser, lower down. The blue eye should be a different type of blue and a little less terrifying. There should be no pupil. Then we have Wigglytuff. Wigglytuff I think is more accurate. It looks a little more soulless, but I think it's more accurate. My curl should be going up instead of down. Again, black inside the ears. The eye color is wrong. Stomach, not bad, but it should be higher. That is a good Wigglytuff. Then we have Zubat. I think my Zubat is good. I think about Zubat and I think that's accurate. It's exactly what I said. Accurate, but the colors are off. Then we have Golbat. Again, I think I have another accurate one on my hands. I thought Golbat also didn't have eyes, but it does. Cool. Then we have Oddish. I think my colors are off again, but again, like I said, colors should be a bit different, but that is an Oddish. Then we have Gloom. This is where things start to go wrong again. So the flower should be a different color. The leaves, well, I'm not sure they're leaves, but those things should be a different color. The mouth should actually be a mouth that's just drooling. It should be lips is what I'm trying to say. The eyes go a different way. Yeah, it definitely gives a different vibe when the eyes go up like that. Then we have Vileplume or Vileplume. Okay, ignore everything I just said. This one is going to be my most inaccurate, I think, both in color and generally. It should be more squat. Flower should be larger. Then we have Paris. That's just a creature, and I think it's pretty accurate. Then we have Parasect. So to the purse, it should be higher up, so the leg should extend more to bring it higher up. Venonat. Okay, I did not give it hands, which it needs. Feet should actually be more like feet than shoes. The eyes are more pink. And I didn't do the pattern in them. Then we have Venomoth. Okay, big old stupid eyes. Wing shape is wrong. Wing pattern's wrong. Move on to Diglett. Diglett is pretty simple. Just a little guy. Just a creature coming from the earth. And yet still I managed to get it wrong because I did not give it its little pink nose. And the dirt around it should be more grey. More like gravel, I guess, than dirt. Of course, we have Dog Trio, where we have 3 of them. I just drew 3 Digletts again. So, of course, all the problems I had with my Diglett, I have with my Dog Trio. Then we have Meowth. So I didn't do the forehead whiskers, which cats do have. That's Meowth. Then that's right. Then we have Persian. Okay, so I got the center gem correct, but the color wrong to be red. face should be more angular and longer. Psyduck. Okay, so the 3 hair things I got correct, but they should be black. The yellow is wrong. I did not give them a tail. We have Golduck, who looks like they're about to drop super hot fire on them. So my blue is off. Eye color and eye shape wrong. There's a center gem, just like with Persian. I should remember that. Monkey, I know, is just a little angry monkey creature, very circular. So I gave you boxing gloves, which is obviously wrong. Then we have the evolution primate. I didn't really know what to do. Again, no boxing gloves, but the hands are a little more glove-like. I think my girl leaf is wrong. The orange is wrong. The eye color is wrong. Oh, so the neck thing isn't under the neck. It goes from the snout down to the neck. Evolved into Arcanine. Should be more of the fur cover in the face. Give it kind of a bearded type of look. And there's also fur on the back ankles, it looks like. And behind. Poliwag, just as a tadpole. So it has a mouth, which I didn't anticipate. But I also don't like. Then we have Poliwhirl. I made them too tall. And their eyes, I need to add a bump for the eyes. I put the eyes too low. Then we have Poliwrath, which I did do the eye thing for. I'm such an interesting person. I remember the eye thing for Poliwrath, but not for Poliwhirl. Then we have Aber. I didn't give them a tail. Why didn't I give them a tail? So I have the shoulder things, but the chest should also be the same color as the shoulders. Feet, not bad. Oh, I kind of nailed that one. Kadabra. Okay, the rest of the line is going to be maybe a bit of a disappointment. Okay, so it's 1 spoon, 1 big old spoon, and give them a mustache. Okay, Alakazam. I didn't know what to do at all. Okay, so this one has 2 spoons. Again, no mustache. Kind of the same issues I had with all the other ones. Move on to Machop. Color is off. Eyes should be red. The head things, the things on his head should be larger. Machoke. Oh my god. Places Barney the dinosaur. Then of course Machamp, which I think looks really, really bad. 4 arms, which is good. It's ugly. Move on to Bellsprout. The eyes are not quite. If I took away the circle around it and the whites, it would be pretty accurate. The body should be more. Move on to Weeping Bell. Let's see if we can keep this streak going. Okay, I don't have the 3 circles. I have the stem, but not in quite the correct way. The leaf should be on the side, not one single leaf on the top. But the eyes are more accurate than with Bellsprout, so that's good. And we have Victory Bell. Victory Bell, I know is, I don't know what it is. Okay, I have the leaf on top, but the leaf is not quite the correct shape, and I don't have a stem holding it. Tentacool. Okay, so the shape is a bit off, and there's also a center gem. But I do think I could have been more accurate for Tentacruel, because I didn't know what to do. I just know it's wider and it has more tentacles. Again, no center gem. Eyes should be on the top blue thing. Okay, then we have Geodude. The upper arm should be smaller, the forearm should be bigger, and the fist should be biggest, which I didn't do. Then we have Evolution Graveler. Face should be higher up, and there should be that structure kind of going on up above the face, which I didn't do. And the legs should be far smaller. It shouldn't have legs at all, actually. It should just be feet. Then we have Golem. Face should be more shapely. I didn't give it a mouth. Eyes wrong. The arms and legs are positionally correct, but everything else about them is wrong. Okay, then we have Ponyta. Okay, it should have more fire on the legs and on the back. Okay, then we have Rapidash. Rapidash has a horn, but that's Rapidash. And if anybody tells you different, don't talk to them anymore. Then we have Slowpoke. The mouth is wrong. The eyes should be just like with Psyduck. The eyes should be more insane. So I've seen that coming. We have Evolution Slowbro. The shell is more bitey, which I didn't do. I didn't give it much of a face, to be honest. Then we have Magnemite, which is a circle with a screw on top and 2 magnets. It is a circle with a screw on top, 2 screws below, and 2 magnets. Okay. Then we have Magneton, which I did do the screws at the bottom, but now that I see that Magnemite has screws at the bottom and the top, it's on my mind that the Magneton might have screws on top as well, but I didn't do that. Again, pupils much smaller, and like I assume there's a screw on top, which I didn't do. Then we have Farfetch'd. I know Farfetch'd is a bird with a leak. I do have the top of head things, but I have them wrong. and I don't have the V in the center of the forehead. Okay, then we have Doduo, which is an ostrich, I think. Okay, beak should be longer, feet should be longer, the neck should be black instead of brown. But overall, good. I did a good job with this one. So assumedly, I should also do a good job with my Dodrio. I also don't have the black on the side of the feathers, and I don't have the two black things sticking up from either side. Move on to seal. I've drawn a seal, but that's pretty good. Okay, so the tail should be more split and more water shaped. I also don't have the mouth snout thing, neither do I have the tusks. Dugong, I felt like I knew less going in than with seal. The tail should just be one shape. Flippers should be shorter, they should start lower and have a little pattern going on, and it should be eyes different. Grimer, it feels accurate and also horribly inaccurate, of course. And then we have Mock. Mouth has that connecting thing, so, and mouth is much larger, I should also point out, and the colors inside, just like with Grimer, is different. The general color is different. Now we have Shelder, so the shell shape is different for sure. Move on to the evolution Cloyster, which is a creature. For a while, I thought I was wrong about where the spike comes from. I thought the spikes were the two things on the side, but I was actually correct about that. And there's more going on inside. I just did the same thing that was happening with Shelder, where I just made the inside dark. Move on to Ghastly, which is a ball of gas, I think. The way I did the gas is a bit different, and they should be black with much larger eyes. Okay, now we have Hunter. No, the teeth, I was thinking about the teeth, but teeth should have been part of the face rather than actual teeth. Eyes should be bigger with smaller pupils. Hands should be more clawed. I kind of made them fists because I could not figure out what they would be doing. They're haunting you. Gengar has legs, which is cool. This is why my Gengar is ugly, because it should have those two spikes coming from the head, not just the center spikes I gave it. Feet should be more pointy. Hands should be hands-esque. The smile, it has a teethy smile rather than a weird open mouth smile. And the eyes should be red. Then we have Onyx. I think my Onyx is really good. Face shape, not bad, but I didn't give them a mouth. The horn thing in the center should be less sharp. Should be more rectangular going up that way. Move on to Drowsy. Ugh, Drowsy. So the color should be different. Should be more of a brown gray type of situation. And it should have open toe feet shoes. Snout should be small. I thought the snout should be bigger. I thought I did the snout too small, and it also comes from the top of the head rather than lower down. And then Hypno, there should be more of a nose than what I did. The ears are not bad. It only has one hypnotizing magnet thing. Then we have Krabby. Krabby and Kingler are not on my mind so much, so I am not sure how accurate I have their design. Yeah, the red is more of a pale orange for sure. Shape is completely wrong. I just drew a crab. Kingler, it's just wrong. It's just wrong. I knew it was wrong. It's wrong. Okay, move on to Voltorb. Maybe a little more anger, so a little more shaping over the eyes to make it look more intense. But there's not much to say about Voltorb. White on the bottom, red on top. I got that right. And then Electrode has more cartoony eyes, I believe. And the color is switched. I know that much. Okay, so it has a mouth. I didn't consider that. Besides the mouth and that the red should be lighter. That's not bad. Then we have Execute. I wasn't sure of the number of eggs, but it felt like half a dozen would be correct. So I put 12. I hope that's correct. I cracked one. I know one is completely cracked, like it's dead in the background. And then I gave another one a crack because it felt like one of them should be unique. Okay, well, not all of them are angry and almost all of them have cracks. Then we have Evolution Executor. I believe I got wrong because I was thinking more coconut tree. My fault. Then we have Cubone. There's a section in the belly. Like I gave it, the legs should be different. I made far too tall. Then Marowak, it does have the sectioning. Okay, so the sectioning was accurate for Marowak. I forgot the bone. They're on their way to get their bone. They lost it there. There they go. Then we have Hitmonlee, which in my head is simply a brown shape with 2 legs and 2 arms apparently. Why did I think that Hitmonlee doesn't have arms? Who is telling me? Where is arms? Okay, and then we have Hitmonchan. So he has a full dress rather than just a skirt. And there are no knee pads, but I did get the boxing gloves. Then we have Lickitung. It's pink and has a big tongue. My tongue looks weird. It isn't settled into the mouth well. And looking at the image, I can understand why that happened. I definitely went about it strangely, but I think I was losing my mind by that point. Then we have Coffin. I think we have another accurate one on our hands. Face should be higher up and more squished together to have that symbol on the chest, which I forgot. You can just say it's the angle. Then we have the dust, well, not dust, but the poison gas, I suppose, shooting out of the craters. Moving on to Wheezing. Again, I don't have the symbols on the chest, and I don't have the teeth are a little bit off, but it's pretty good. Rhyhorn, oh my god, it's going to be my biggest disappointment. I don't know Rhyhorn or Rhydon that well. The only thing I know is that Rhyhorn looks like it should be steel, and it's on all 4s, while Rhydon is just completely different and on 2 legs. I don't know what to say. It's inaccurate. I got the fact that it looks like it should be steel and that it's on all 4s, but other than that, and I got the horn, but other than that, not much going for it. And then Rhydon, on the other hand, I don't know. Okay, I got the Stormy right. I didn't give it a tail, and the horn should be on its nose rather than its forehead. Everything about it is wrong. Let's just move on. To Chansey, I think I got a lot more accurate. Ear thing should be more down and have a different color on the end. Egg pouch should be smaller. And there's a tail that I didn't consider. Okay, so we're gonna move on to Tangela. I got the feet right. Got the general gist correct. The color should be more blue. And where the eyes come from should be like a hollow area. Pupil should be smaller. I knew that the tangles should be smaller, but I couldn't do that without making them look weird. So this is just a kangaroo. Honestly, I could envision Kangaskhan in my head, and I felt like it had more armor. It had more of an armor thing going on, but I just couldn't figure out how to draw it. So I just drew a kangaroo. You see, I did the forehead thing. I added that last because I knew there was like a forehead thing going on. I gave it a shoulder thing too, but the shoulder thing is completely wrong. And also has a knee thing going on. I gave it its baby, but its baby should be purple. This is not Kangaskhan. Moving on, I have Horsey. Another case of me just drawing an animal because I couldn't figure it out. All I know about Horsey is that they have that big whoop at the front, but I just kind of drew a seahorse. Section should be higher, it should be a different color. The back fin should be higher. The 3 things I have at the back should be more on the side of the head, and the eyes should be red. Move on to Seadra, which is worse because I truly just drew a seahorse. I didn't know what to do. Yeah, it looks nothing like it at all. Then we have Golden, which is a fish. They're serving. Okay, tail, different shape completely. Fins, completely different shape. But I got the horn. The horn should be a different color. The eye color is pretty close. Then we have Seeking. The colors are not wholly inaccurate, but every pattern is wrong. The lips are not completely wrong. The horn should be shorter and the shape is bad. Eyes should be more fish. Then we have Staryu. Staryu is a alien, right? Staryu, I drew a star and I know it has a center gem. I made the gem far too big. And I made it the entire creature too orange. Moving on to Starmie. The gem is bigger than Staryu's, but mine I think is still too big. And I don't have these extenders coming from the sides of the gem holder. Okay, moving on to everybody's favorite, Mr. Mime. I have the stomach circle, the arm circles. I don't have the leg circles. The torso should be smaller, and I don't have the jester shoes. I have the gloves. And that's all I'll say about that. I know Cypher is like a grasshopper. A mantis. The scythes should be different. Wings. The wing shape is correct, but the colors are wrong. Then we have Jinx. So it should be more pink. The hair should be straighter. And there's a chest section to the dress that I didn't do. And there's also a thing on her arms I've never noticed. That's interesting. Then we have Electabuzz. I don't have any spikes on the feet. I did the arms being bigger pretty good. Other than that, I don't have any of the finer details. Then we have Magma. Okay, so mine is orange and red when it should be yellow and orange. And I also have the color switch. There's this type of festive pinata thing going on the arms that I don't have. Okay, time for another embarrassment. I have Pinsel. So I got the horns, I got the general shape and the teeth situation, but I've made my teeth fast, sharper and ineffective. The collar is off, legs off, arms non-existent. He must grab, and yet he has no arms. Then we have Taurus. The main color isn't too far off, and I don't have those forehead center things. The horn should be metallic. Then we have Magikarp. So the yellow thing should be maybe a bit more of an orange, and it also has it under, and it has those two like whiskers coming out that I don't have. Gyarados, mouth's a little insane. The tail is wrong. On the side color correct, but the sectioning of the entire thing is wrong. Head shape wrong and should be more separate from the body, and I don't have the back things correct. Then we have Lapras. I knew the underside would be a different color, but I could not get a color that looked good, maybe because the entire thing's color is off. Again, we have a situation of those ears being more of a swirl than actual ears, and it has a little bit of a horn thing in the center. Everything about it is inaccurate and wrong. We have Ditto. Eyes should be smaller. I made the arms a little more armish than they actually are. But there's not much you can get wrong about Ditto. Eevee. Okay, so I have the collar a bit wrong. I have the big old ears, which is good. Big old fluffy tail, but there should be more brown at the beginning of it. I have the neck fluff, but it should be a bit shorter and maybe a bit wider. Then we have Vaporeon. I don't have the spikies on the tail. The blue is off. The ears should be bigger and the inside should be yellow instead of white. I do have a center head thing, but it's not what it should be. Then we have Jolteon. So my yellow should have been a little bit more yellow. The eyes, again, should be more filled out. The inside of the ear should be darker. I have the neck scruff. Flareon. Neck scruff, head scruff, tail scruff. Reddish orange. Okay, so it should be a bit more orange than red. Again, eyes. Porygon. Oh god. I did a bad job, but I didn't know what else to do. All I know is general shape and it's very sharp. We have Omanite. Shell's a bit different. I should have like more arms, tentacles. I don't know. Omastar. So the top of the star doesn't exist like that. And the shell should be coming up over it more. There's also spikes on the shell. I also didn't section off the shell, which I think is also the case with Omanite. Moving on to Kabuto. So it should have the two dots on top, I think, again resembling a face maybe. And the legs should be larger. Kabutops. I got the arm color wrong. Sectioning of the chest wrong, and it should be a lighter color. There's also a tail and things going on at the back. I got the head shape right, which is good. Then we have Aerodactyl. I didn't give them any teeth. Sorry. I do have a head spike. Then we have big old Snorlax. I couldn't figure out the ears. So the ears are just triangular. That's what it is. I have the triangular shape on the forehead, I remembered, although it should be deeper. And then we move on to our legendaries. Articuno. Not awful. The chest part should be more flowy. The legs should be more separated and longer. I don't have a tail at all. The wings are not awful. Zapdos. This is my Zapdos. Tail, the beak should be much longer. The body, the legs should be higher. And then we have Moltres. The legs completely wrong. Beak should be much longer. Body is just wrong. And then we have, I have a question. So Dratini, Dragonair, and Dragonite come after the legendaries. Are they legendaries? I don't understand this placement. Anyway, you have Dratini. Eyes are pretty accurate, but there's less white. I have the circle in the forehead and the on the side of the chest I do not have. Then we have Dragonair. I felt a lot less confident in Dragonair. So the gem is not on the forehead anymore, it's on the chest, and there's also 2 little gems at the end of the tail. Again, I don't have the underside color. Eyes are wrong. I have the headpieces, but they are not quite right. And then, of course, we have Dragonite. Why am I not remembering the wings on any of these? Why am I like that? So I've forgotten the wings. I have the 2 little head spaghettis. Mewtwo. The hands. I do have 3 fingies, but they should be bald at the end. Bald. I have the 2 head spikes, but they're less ears and they're more flat at the top. And finally, number 151, Mew. Okay, the pink is a little bit off. The body should be smaller coming down from the neck. The eyes, they are blue, but not quite that blue. And the ears should be a little bit different. Face shape just a bit different. I do have the tail being bigger at the end. I remember that part. The big old feet should be a bit different. More of it should be foot than leg. And the arms. The arms are a choice. Now I am going to rest. Like and subscribe if you want a Nuzlocke or something. I don't know. Bye.